And we pitched this is a bit sort of, it's slightly pure adjacent. We pitched something about, it's a sort of a little bit of a personal bugbear of mine, and the process that we're going to talk about. And I'm fundamentally lazy, and I just want to automate everything so I can just sort of press a button in the morning and then just not do anything else for the rest of the day. And that sort of mindset is feeding into some of the things we're looking at here, and things we've done with the Researchfish API. So just a quick overview of what we'll talk about. We'll talk about what we did, what we're talking to you guys about today, some of the challenges that we had. I know not every geographical area will be familiar with Researchfish or the processes that we go through in the UK, especially with Researchfish. So we'll talk a bit about that, talk a bit about how we tried to, what the issue was, how we tried to solve it, and so then some feedback back to Researchfish colleagues on sort of improvements, and a little bit of further playing that we've done with trying to use AI to smooth out some of these problems. So the University of Edinburgh, for those of you who don't know, capital of Scotland, we've used Pure for about, well, 2011, 2012. If James Toon was in the room, he'd know exactly when, because he was doing this job when we acquired Pure. We use it as our institutional CRIS. We've got the portal. And we're a large university covering any and every subject you can probably think of. So Pure is fundamental to our research information operation within the university. And it's part of that where it comes into play with this thing called the multi-funder submission window, which is every year our funders ask the people that they've funded to go through a process to use the platform Researchfish to report on the outcomes of the research, the things that people have done for that particular year. There's a lot of overlap between the content that people are asking for in Researchfish and the content that we've got in Pure, and we'll touch on a bit about that on the further slides. But the reporting is quite important for us. There are sanctions that are applied to people if they don't report. They could be financial, they could stop people from applying for new projects. So it's very important that we ensure that the reporting is maximised, and that the processes we deal with within the centre of the university, so I'm based in the library, the processes help smooth this entire process for the rest of the university to ensure we get high compliance. We do this by lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of reporting. So there aren't many other geographical areas go through these sorts of processes, but Austria and Denmark, I believe, have similar sort of multi-funder submission windows where there is a concentrated period of activity. During this concentrated period of activity, we are having to monitor hundreds of awards. There was about 1,400 that needed to be reported on in this 6-week period. We do this via numerous different ways. We've got some data set up within the Researchfish application itself around reporting nodes. So we've structured the data in Researchfish according to our internal organizational structure within the university. That helps us split things up. We send out spreadsheets, we push stuff into dashboards, we go through frenetic activity as we get towards the end of the submission period, where it's spreadsheets every hour. People can chase this individual and chase that individual, and I know they're on the beach in the Maldives, but go and get them to fill in their reporting. And we download something called an RTH file, so that it contains all of our reporting, all of our awards, and gives some idea as to who's reported and who hasn't reported. So, I look at this thing and I think, oh, here we go. Can we streamline it? Can we actually improve things and make my life better? Because this is all about making my life better. So we've got an awful lot of the back-end stuff set up. So there's dashboards. Data is acquired manually through the interface. It's downloaded. It's uploaded into dashboards. We've got some Power Automate scripts at play that will split up spreadsheets into smaller spreadsheets that can then be emailed out. It'll hide some columns. But I started to look at the Researchfish API, and can we actually use one of the endpoints, the awards endpoint, to try and acquire the data and streamline some of this stuff? The answer is yes, we can. I perhaps once was quite technical. I'm not technical anymore. I don't know whether this counts as vibe coding, which I know there was an article on the BBC News website this morning that said it had been taken into some dictionary as the word of the year or the word of the century. And it's vibe-coding, so that's more than one word to me. But I used AI to try and work out some of the scripting that I'm about to show you. So this is, I wanted to acquire the data into Microsoft 365 environment because that's where everything else happens. So I started looking at whether we could do it in Excel using Power Query. And we can. So I built a little bit of code, again with help of AI, to initiate the call with the Researchfish Awards API, to then start to build the extract from it. Now in this particular example, you probably can't see the detail on the screen. There's a couple of parameters we can pass to the API, and there's actually, this one will limit by a funder. And I've used a rather small funder for reasons which will become apparent as we work through the presentation. It took a little bit of work to try and get this to get the correct authorization credentials from the Researchfish endpoint, because there is a separate authorization endpoint, and that was a little bit of a hurdle that I needed to get past, and I needed an actual human to go and talk to about that within Edinburgh, because I just couldn't work out how these two things hung together. So once you've got that, you then fire off a query at the endpoint, with the limiter parameters that we can send. So this is looking for a funder whose code in Researchfish is ERUK-. You acquire those results, and then you just start looping through those results, and you loop through, and you loop through, and you loop through. So you get them a page at a time. I think this funder only has about 5 or 6 projects in the system, so it's a nice, easy test for us. So it just loops through, and eventually it gets to the end. And within the Power Automate, the Power Query code, I can tell it which columns I want, which bits of information I want out of the system. And at this stage, that large block of red text at the bottom, I can start renaming columns as well. So I can restructure the data as it's coming out at me in a way that makes more sense to me. And this is a practical example of the sort of stuff we get back. I stripped out an awful lot of the fields that you saw on the previous screen. I'm not interested in most of it. But there are some critical fields in here that we would then use to send out to colleagues who are, you can see our reporting nodes down there, Centre for Brain Discovery Brain Sciences, Centre for Information Research. We can use that column in order to then split the spreadsheet and email out and then pipe all of this into a dashboard. So that's all working, it's not too bad, given that I didn't particularly understand what I was doing, but I was quite happy with that, albeit there were a few caveats. And at this point, I'll hand over to our colleague Gavin to talk through the next bit.
Okay. Thank you very much, Damon. So now I'm talking about Damon's evaluation of the API, so I can be a little bit friendlier. But yeah, so the couple of the things that came out from Damon's comments, the speed of the API. So the API that Damon is using was set up for a slightly different use case, so it's not really optimized for reporting. It's meant to integrate with an application so that a researcher could authenticate and reuse information that they have as part of some other process. It works for this purpose, but it is a bit slow. And so that's why he was talking about using just a small funder in that example. It's also not helped by the way that it's set up. When he's using it most actively and needs to do it the most is when lots of other people are doing the same kind of thing, which slows it down a bit as well. So there's a definite speed piece with the current API. But as he said, despite the speed side of things, the data was good for what it was he was trying to do and was able to actually bring it in. He had a couple of bits of friendly feedback. So the first of which was that there's a lot of sort of calculations that need to be done on the data that come out. So in the RHT file, which he talked about, sort of you go on the platform, you download, everything's all neatly calculated, but we had to talk through, okay, if you have this field and this field, then you understand this logical condition. And so you had to do a little bit with that. Again, that's to do with the way that the current API is set up. And as he mentioned, there's a bit of challenge in terms of the authentication, which I'm assured is now industry standard kind of thing. So it's more secure. It's so secure you can only get into it with great difficulty, but keeps it all super secure. And what he asked in terms of recommendations were to have better filtering and more completeness, I think as well, but actually there's a lot of the information that's already there. And so all this feedback is really good for us. This is an area that we've wanted to expand on for a while. So we've got a sort of a fairly old system. This is a fairly old API. It's been around for a while. It hasn't really been changed. But we're doing a piece of work to replace the foundations, which hopefully next year we'll start to move in a sort of a next generation API, which will be optimized for reporting. And so I think we'll address pretty much all of Damon's comments. So that's what we're hoping to do in the future. So as I say, we're planning to get to this new version. It's going to be a reporting API, and that's the infrastructure that's going in. And it should be more reliable, faster, better integration. We don't know exactly when it's going to come out because we're focusing on the foundations, and so you need to get that bit done before you can then do the actual API. But we're doing it as an API-first approach. So it'll work internally first, and then we can look to make it go externally, and we've already got some of that up and running right now. And some of the additional things that Damon was interested in was basically sort of a bit more on the filtering, a bit more of everything that was good, but a bit more of it across the board, which we're aiming at. So that's the use case that's a little bit more niche to the UK, where there's this multi-funder submission period and there's this compliance that goes on. But actually, as Damon said, there's a lot of information in Pure that's relevant to Researchfish. And actually, there's a lot of information in Researchfish that's relevant to Pure because there's a lot of interaction with individuals, and so there can be things that could be pulled back in as well. And actually, currently, Edinburgh does push a number of different types of outputs that they collect in Pure into Researchfish. And so they do this for publications, datasets, software, audio, video, and images. This is done through using IDs, so DOIs or PubMed IDs. And it's pushed in what's currently a template-based approach. And so in order to do this, you need to have the ID of the output and the grant ID as well. So this is needed. And when I've said that, you probably all went, aha, that's the problem as well, because it's not always the case that you have the grant ID linked to the individual outputs in Pure. There is some new functionality that we've built, which Edinburgh hasn't used yet. So that we call that the researcher record feature, which enables you to essentially pass information with just a person-based ID. So if you don't have a grant, but you know the person, and in Pure you pretty much always know the person, you should be able to push all of the data into Researchfish as well. So that's an extra piece that Edinburgh hasn't used yet. So that's getting information from Pure into Researchfish using the templates, but while it is available to universities, and a number of other ones do it, Edinburgh hasn't taken information from Researchfish and pushed it back into their Pure system yet. Maybe this time.
So I can say a bit more about that.
Yeah.
So I thought looking at that structure that we've got now, that sort of interface, whether I could then query the outcomes endpoint, because the outcomes endpoint will give me all the data that we've put into Researchfish, pull that down and somehow get that into our Pure as an upload. My technical skills are limited, and it didn't do what I wanted it to do. Yes, you can download the data, but then using something like the bulk upload functionality in Pure, there is a schema, there is a standard, there is a form of a file that you need to build in order to then get this stuff into Researchfish. So that fell flat, and I couldn't get that working. But then I thought AI. So I looked at using our local LLM. I only gave it the schema that you can download from Pure. I gave it some JSON that we got out of the Researchfish API. I said to our LLM, take that file of data and format it in that format for Pure. and it gave me something which wasn't too far away from what I needed, without giving it any information about, well, that field means that, and that field means that, and that field means that. So when you download when you get the JSON information, the labels that are in the file are largely meaningless. So I didn't tell it any of that, and yet it identified the journal, the title, the lead author, the pages of the publication, the volume, the issue, the PubMed ID, which was just a string of numbers in the extract, and the DOI. And it stuck all that in the right place in the template. And speaking to Gavin, there is a definitions document, which I could have also given it, that would say this field means that, and that would hopefully make the translation of information even better. So whilst it has caused an issue across the UK community, particularly trying to get the data reshape, reformat. I know colleagues from Manchester University tried to do this at some point in the past. I think the dreaded AI is actually very, very helpful in this particular instance. So some positive stuff there.
Yeah, and there is actually quite a lot of data in Researchfish relating to Edinburgh Awards and other ones as well. And so it's really good to get that back. And what we try and do with interoperability is always, if the researchers have spent some time and put something somewhere, we should try and reuse it if it's at all possible. So it'll be a really good news story when we can do that. We have tried a few different things to try and improve that kind of transfer. And so we actually have some other projects currently going that are looking to try and improve the automaticity. So to remove this, you need to download, you need to put things in a template, and see what we can do on the back end. The Pure team has done a really good job, and they've put together some really good resources on help juice about how to get information from Pure into Researchfish and from Researchfish into Pure. So if your institution has some information that's in Researchfish, you might want to look at that and see about getting some of that through. And then on our side, we've produced a number of YouTube video tutorials, so short snippets that just help people go through step by step. And yeah, so really it's all good stuff. We're playing nicely, and we're planning to do more stuff in the future.